This is our first lesson in our unit on statistics and statistical reasoning, and we're going to just get started by looking at data. There's quite a bit of terminology that is included in your notes. It's your responsibility to go through that, read through it, but as we use that terminology, I'll talk about it a bit more. So you can see through this first page, there's some terms that you should be aware of, and then same on our second page there. Now, on our second page here, we have a bit of an investigation. Okay, it says the payrolls for 3 small companies are shown in the table. Figures include year-end bonuses. Each company has 15 employees. Sanella wonders if the companies have similar average salaries. So if we look here, you can see our table. There's our 3 companies: Media Focus Advertising, Computer Rescue, and Auto Value Sales. And then we've got the income for those 15 employees in each company. On the side here, I've got a bunch of symbols. These symbols have meaning, and I've told you what those mean. You're going to get more and more comfortable with those symbols, and we're going to use those. Towards the bottom here, I also have a definition of range, mean, and median. Okay, so we're talking about I think there should be mode there as well. I think it's not included. Maybe it's on the top of the next page. There it is, mode. So those are all of our measures of central tendency. So if you hear that, that's what we're talking about: range, mean, median, and mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that data from that table. If you go back, we're going to take that data from the table and we're going to calculate. Okay, we're going to calculate all of that information. We're going to calculate range, mean, median, and mode, and see what those actually mean in terms of this data. Okay, so make sure you have your graphing calculators out. That's going to be useful for you here. I'm going to show you how to do this in your calculator. We're also going to talk about how to do this by hand. Okay, scrolling to the bottom here and on to the next page, you can see that I've got your calculator steps. So it says how to enter data into your calculator. Press the Stat button, go to Edit, then press Enter, and then the following should appear. So let's go ahead and do that. So take out your calculators, press the Stat button, and then go to Edit. That's 1. Now I've got data in here. You may have data, you may not have data. If you have data in here, just arrow up and hit Clear, then Enter. Do the same with the other. Now some people ask, well, why can't I just hit delete? If you go up and hit delete, I don't know if you noticed what happened. I had list 1, list 2, list 3, list 4, and now my list 1 is gone. This is a very common occurrence. If you've lost your list 1, or if they're not listed in order, click on Stat again, and at the bottom of your setup editor, if you hit 5 and Enter, and then go back into Stat 1, you'll get that back. A quick way to delete all of them if you've got a lot of data in there, you can just go to Clear List number 4, and then you just say which list you're clearing. Alright, so let's go back into Stat 1, and now it says enter all the values for the list in List 1, pressing Enter after each entry to move down the list. Okay, so if we go back to our notes page and go back to our data here, so I'm going to put all of this data into List 1. I'm going to put all of this data into List 2, and I'm going to put all this data into List 3. So I'm going to do that if you want to hit pause on the video and take your time and carefully put all of that data into your list. So again, if I'm going to put in my first one, just so you can see how to do the first couple, I would put 245,000 and then hit Enter, and that puts the first one in. 162,000, Enter, and keep going with that till you get the full list. At this point, you should have all of your data put into your calculator. Now, if you want to sort your data, if you go to Stat 2, it says Sort, right? And then you put whatever lists you want to sort in separate lists with comma. So if I want to sort L1, I would put in L1 here, commas over here, and then I'd put L2, comma, L3, and then enter. And when I go into stat 1, all of that data should be sorted from smallest to biggest. Is that important? Not necessarily, but for some things it might be easier to see what's going on if you sort the lists. Okay? Now, how do we determine the central tendencies? Remember, that's mean, median, mode, and so on. So when we do this, we go into our calculator and press the stat button again. But now we're going to arrow over to the calc button. Now, where am I seeing how to do this? I'm just in your notes on this next page here. So I'm reading through this menu. So it's important that you see that. So when you go back, you can watch the video again, or you can go back to this page here to see how to do that. So right here I'm at press stat, arrow over to calc. Now it says go to 1-1 var stats. What does that mean? That's your single variable statistics. Okay, so if you press 1 and hit enter, right? I'm going to do this on line 1, okay? So, or sorry, list 1. So I'm going to go L1 and then hit enter here. So the calculator is calculating all of my central tendencies, all of my statistics just on list 1. List 2 and list 3 are just holding there. They're just sitting there. Now if I wanted, I could just do everything in list 1 and then delete list 1 and then put everything from the next one into list 2 and so on. But having all the data there, you can jump between those 3 lists easily. Okay? Now, what does all of this mean? We have a whole bunch of symbols here that really have no meaning to us at this point. So let's go back to our notes page. And the bottom here, we've got the calculator symbols. So the first symbol here is a mean. The sum of the scores, that summation symbol. Sum of the scores squared. Now remember, we're not using all of this in this course, but it's still good to know what these things are so you don't select them by mistake. Standard deviation of a sample. Standard deviation of a population. So some of these are Greek symbols. The number of scores. The smallest score is min x. The first quartile is Q1. The median, we're going to be using that a lot. Med, which is your quartile 2. Continuing on the next page here. The third quartile is Q3, and the largest score is max x. Okay, so we have all of those in there. Now, the questions here, A, B, and C, right? Or just A and B. Is there C? Just an A and B. So for A and B, it says, what is the range of salaries for each company? Okay, well, we can't do each company right now. We can do the company for list 1. Okay, we'll just do that one, that first company, Media Focus Advertising. Then we're going to do this all over again for list 2, and then all over again for list 3. So it's good to read ahead, because they say, okay, here, now let's find the mean for that company, the median for that company, the mode for that company. All right, so let's start at the beginning. It says, what is the range of salaries? Well, what does range mean? If you go back to your definitions, the range, let's go back there. Where was that? On the next page, the bottom here, the range, a measure of dispersion represented by the difference between the highest and lowest scores. So that's one good reason to order your data, because the top piece of data we know is now going to be the biggest one, and the bottom piece of data is going to be the smallest one. So if we go back to our list, go stat 1, we can do it that way. So we can look, there's 27,300. If we go all the way to the bottom, because we've ordered this, that's 245,000. So your range is just the difference between those two numbers. But let's say you didn't order that. Well, if we go back to stat calc, one variable statistics, right? And that's doing that on L1, single variable statistics. Remember, one of our values gives us our minimum x value. You could see it right here. There's that 27,300. And then there's another one that gives us our max x, $245,000. So even if you didn't order it, the calculator will pick out your minimum and maximum scores. Okay, so let's put that into our page here because they're asking us for the range. So for media focus advertising, we would take our biggest score, subtract it from, or subtract our small score from that, and we would get a range of 217,700. So that's how you figure out the range. This is max X, and this is min X. B, determine the measure of central tendency for the salary. So central tendency are mean, median, and mode. So go back to your calculator, okay, and we're scrolling up and down here. We want to figure out what our mean is, and our mean is this X bar, right? That very first one, that's our mean. When you're rounding, in general, round to 2 decimal places. So our mean is given as $70,886.67. Remember, we're talking about money here. This is the salary. So the mean salary, the average salary, is $70,886.67. Median. Okay, so if I go back to our definitions, mean, a measure of central tendency determined by dividing the sum of all the values in a data set by the number of values in the data set. And you've probably done that in science before. You've added them all up and divided by how many there are. That's fine. The calculator does it for you. So we'll look at how we can do that by hand as well. So that's, we usually call the average. What is median though? It says a measure of central tendency, again, that's just the category, represented by the middle value of an ordered set of data. If the data has more than one middle value, the median is the mean of the two. So you take the average of the two middle ones, if there are two middle ones. But the data must be arranged from smallest to largest to figure this out. Otherwise, you're not able to figure out what that median is. Now, if we go back, looking through here, our median was given as our second quartile, okay? So let's go to our calculator, right? And if we scroll down, median right there, 57,500. So that's the middle value. The median, 57,500. Oops, extra zero, $500. You could put dollar signs if you want, but we can just leave them because we know what we're talking about is money. All right, for the mode. The mode. Now, I don't remember seeing mode, but maybe it was there. Let's go have a look. So if we look down, max X, go back up. Okay, I don't see it. And if we go into our notes package, we look here, median, no, there's no symbol here that gives us the mode. So how do we figure out the mode? Well, what is the mode? At the top here. It says a measure of the central tendency represented by the value that occurs most often in a set of data. So what value occurs most often? So if we go back to our list, we can go back to our original list here. Where is it? And look at our values here. Now, you can use a highlighter or whatever you need to do, and you can see, well, there's 6100 happened twice. Was there any other values that occurred more than once? I don't see any other ones, okay? So when a value shows up more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times, the one that occurs the most often, one that you see the most often, is your mode. Okay, so your graphing calculator isn't going to give that to you. So now, oops, let's go into that page. So our mode here, the value that occurs most often, that means that's the salary that's paid most often at this place of work, is 61,000. What I'm going to get you to do is go back and do the same thing for L2 and L3 and go all the way through. You can hit pause on the video. I'm not going to go through the steps each time. You can rewatch the steps for list 1, but it's the exact same thing. What I am going to do is I'm going to list the answers here so that you can go back and check those. So now that you've done that, come and check your answers. See if you've got the same things that I got. So remember, computer rescues L2. And auto sales is L3. So now you should be proficient at using the graphing calculator to find that information. Now let's see, how can we do that by hand? Take a look at the next example here. Now here it says find the range, mean, median, and mode for the set of data. So we've got a list and we're going to figure this out. So in order to find the mean, what you're doing is you're adding them up. So you're finding the sum of all your values and then you're dividing it by how many values you have. So what do I mean? So I'm going to find the mean by taking 2 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus the other 5 plus 8 plus 1 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5. How many values do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 values. I'm going to divide it by 10. Now one thing you need to be very careful of is to use brackets and use order of operations. So we're going to do the top first and then divide by the bottom. So the mean is going to be equal to 41 over 10 or 4.1. So that's our mean. That's the average of all of those numbers. Next we're going to solve for median. Now median, if you remember, is the middlemost number. In order to figure out the median, we need to actually order our numbers from smallest to biggest. So let's do that right now. I'll give you a moment to do that and write it right beside. So for example, I'm going to start with 0, 1, then list the 2 2's, and so on. So go ahead and do that. Alright, so there is our list, and we can figure out the median by figuring the middlemost number. So what is the middlemost number here? If you look at them, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So which one would be our middle number? Why are we having trouble here? Well, we're having trouble here because there's no single middle number, right? There's 2 middle numbers. So if we look at that, these are our 2 middlemost numbers. And what did we say if we have 2 middle numbers? Well, we have to find the average of them. Well, they're the same number. You can still do this. Be 5 plus 5 divided by 2, which would give us 10 divided by 2, or just 5. So when there's more than one middlemost number, then you need to take the average of them. In this case, they're the same. But if they were different, you would do the same math. Okay? Now the last calculation is going to be for mode. And mode is the value that comes up the most often. And ordering it from smallest to biggest, we can see the value that comes up the most often is 5. We've got 3 5s. There are 2 2's, but the one that comes up the most often is 5. So the mode is also 5. Let's take a look at the next example. It's example 2 again. I guess this is example 3. Ungrouped data using our calculator. So this, we were doing this by hand. It's a small data set, so it wasn't bad to do by hand. But if you look at this next set, there's a lot more values here. And it says the following represents the time in minutes it takes for a bus to travel from Flin Flon to the Pas during the month of February. Find the range, mean, median, and mode. Nope, just range, mean, and median for the set of data. They're not asking us to figure out the mode. So in order to do this, we're going to clear our data out in our graphing calculator and put this into list 1. Let's clear everything out. Go into Stat, Edit. I'm going to clear out my lists and put this all into list 1. So take your time and go ahead and do that. Once you have all your data in here, you can either order it, but you don't need to because we know we can figure out the range by using the max and min value. And the calculator will also give us our mean and our median. So let's go ahead, go back into our Stat, go over to Calc. We're doing one variable statistics, and this is on list 1. Enter, and there we go. So our mean, you can see at the top here, 139.96. So let's put that in our question here. Mean 139.96. And if you want, you could start using the symbol. So instead of writing mean, you can write that, and then you're going to get more and more comfortable with the symbols. The median and our range. Now remember, for our median, that's given to us in our calculator, MED, 139. And our range, we need to figure out our max x and subtract our min x. So going back to our calculator, our min x is 111 and our max x is 178. Doing that math, you get 167. All right, example 4. I'm going to ask you to do this on your own, okay? Same thing, put that into list 1, figure out the range, mean, and median for the set of data. The answers you should get, whoops, not equals, is a mean of 36.58, a range of 91, and a median of 22.5. The last example we're going to do is grouped data, but we've got 2 lists here. Okay, so you're going to put this into list 1 and you're going to put this into list 2. Let's go ahead and do that in our calculators. Clear everything out. Stat 1. Oops. Clear that out. And put into list 1 and list 2. I'll give you a moment to go ahead and do that. Alright, so we have all of our data in there. So we're looking at our mark on an applied test and the number of students that received that mark. So what does this mean? Well, this means that there's 4 people who got 45. So if this was a list, it would have 45, 45, 45, 45. There's 6 people that got 55. There is 17 people that got 65, and so on. So instead of listing all of those numbers out, what they've done is they've tallied or counted how many people got each of those marks and listed them this way. So how do we handle that? Well, we put those into our list for our graphing calculator, and when we go to Stat, Calc, single variable statistics again, but now we're going to tell the calculator, okay, list 1 are all the marks, but comma, list 2 is how many people got those marks. So the calculator understands that this is going to be a list a lot longer than what's given, right? There's multiples of those marks. Hit enter, and then the same thing comes up, okay? So our single variable statistics, we've got our central tendencies, we've got our mean there. So our mean is 72.23. Our median reading off our calculator is 75. Our mode is 75. And our range is our max minus our min, which ends up being 95 minus 45, or 50. That doesn't look like a 50. 50. How did I get that mode so easily? Well, right here, whoops, that's supposed to be a highlighter. Our 75 here, there's 22 people who received a mark of 75. So that's the mark that happened the most often of the whole list. So I was just be able to read that from the list. You can also get a range right from this list. 95 is the biggest and 45 is the smallest. That's it for today's lesson. Thanks for joining me.